Welcome to the Easy Computer Fixes channel, and today we're going to show you how to install Ubuntu Linux on a computer, a PC or Mac. Works on Macs also, Intel Macs with no problem, and of course on PC. If you have an old laptop or old PC lying around, Ubuntu is a great operating system actually to install on those machines. And it's a great way to actually revive an older machine that might be too slow for for Windows 7, for example. Another great thing about Ubuntu is that it's, one of those fun little projects. If you've got a computer lying around doing nothing, why not install Linux, Ubuntu Linux, and work around and look at what it looks like. And it's always fun to see new operating systems. So to get Ubuntu, you go onto the Ubuntu website, Ubuntu, as you see here on the screen. You can Google it, you'll get to the site right away. Now, two versions are available. There's a 12.10 version and a 13.10 version. I would suggest that you try the version 12 for a simple reason. It is the most recent and stable version, and the one that has updates up to 2017. The 13.10 version is more like a trial version and will work always, but the problem is after 9 months it's not supported anymore. And also some drivers, special drivers, are available on the 12 but not on the 13. So don't take the 13. Wait for another big stable version before, and take the 12. Now, when you download it, you get an ISO file. An ISO file is a disk image, and what you need to do is either burn it, like I did on a DVD here. What is interesting is that you burn it on a DVD, and if you're in Windows 7 or whatever computer, because you can download it from any computer, on Windows 7 it's quite easy. Once you click the ISO, it's going to ask you if you want to burn it on a CD. And you can also make a bootable USB drive, and look on the website, there's instructions for that. If you don't have a CD-DVD drive on your machine, or maybe the CD-DVD drive doesn't work, you can make a bootable thumb drive to plug in the USB. So once you've got your disk or USB key, what you need to do is actually insert it and boot your computer into the mode that is going to bring you that boot option. So for example, on my Dell computer that I'm using here, which is an old one, it says F12 on the screen to actually have the boot options, and that's what I'm doing. I press F12 and I've got the boot options here. So here it goes. I choose CD, DVD, because that's what I want to have in my computer, and that's what I inserted. If you have a thumb drive, then you'll try to boot from a USB. Some computers don't have that option though, if it's a little older computer. Once you've chosen the good drive, you press enter. On some other computers, on this Dell is F12, on some other computers it's F10, it's F2, depends. Look at your boot screen when you turn on the computer first, and you should see what it will actually be. It's often on screen for a short period of time. Then you're booting, and you should see this little booting with the little bottom icon. Now, Ubuntu is usually quite easy to work and to install. It's also quite easy. Most machines will have it working quite well, but it is a free operating system. It's an open source operating system, and it means that on some machines there are drivers that aren't going to be installed. One thing that you should actually do when you are installing Ubuntu is to make sure your computer is connected to the internet. Best of all, take that Ethernet cable and plug it in. That's what I did on this laptop. I plugged in my Ethernet cable from my router directly on the Ethernet jack. Because some of the Ubuntu machines that you're installing on, what's happening is that the Wi-Fi driver is often not available. So you can't connect via Wi-Fi sometimes when you're installing, but it will connect afterwards when it's installed. And most Ethernet jacks or Ethernet network cards are actually supported in Ubuntu. So make sure you have some internet. If there's absolutely no way to have the internet on your machine, well, continue installing anyway, and there are possibilities that you'll be able to add these connectability or connections later. So mine is connected via that Ethernet jack because I know it works in Ubuntu on my machine. And I also know that my Dell computer has a Broadcom 4322 network card, and that card is not natively supported during install, but it will be after it's going to be installed on the machine. Several ways to make the install on Ubuntu that we'll see of. If your machine has a Windows operating system and you don't want to touch that, you can actually dual boot Ubuntu and Windows together. So you just choose at the beginning which operating system you want to have. And that's a great way to actually work it out and look and have Ubuntu working, and also still have a Windows machine that's working correctly. One word of caution about dual boot. I did a dual boot on this machine yesterday to try it out, and I noticed that Windows 7 had to check files when it booted because it had a problem. So it seems to actually alter the Windows operating system to a little bit. But after about 4 or 5 minutes of Windows checking the files itself, it actually worked and Windows was okay. So it's not that big of a problem, but I hope it's not it cannot cause bigger problems on some other machines. So you get here to that screen. Two options available here. You can try Ubuntu, or you can install Ubuntu. That's what you have of options here. Try Ubuntu means you're loading it in memory and you aren't actually changing anything on the computer itself. It's a great way to test it out and to see if you're going to like it. But here today we're going to install it. So you click the install button and you let it continue. So depending on the machine you're using, these steps are of different lengths. So here it says you need to have these check marks. So it says at least 4.5 gigs available free space, plugged into the power source and connected to the internet. I would add the little check mark to download updates while installing and install third-party software. Then click continue. So these steps might take longer or be faster than me, depending on using a thumb drive or not, and also depending on the speed of the computer you're using. This is a dual core machine, an old dual core machine that a client gave me. And it's clocked at, I believe, 2.2 gigahertz. So if you have a machine that's older, it might take longer. And on some machines it might actually be faster. Depends on the computer you are using, of course. Why would you want to install Ubuntu? Maybe some of you out there never tried it and don't even know what Linux is. For first of all, the experimenting, because what's nice in Ubuntu is that you can try out a different operating system. So here you are. I already have an operating system here, so I want to erase what I have. I have Ubuntu 13 installed, but I want to replace it with 12 because it's better. 12.04. So it's going to delete everything, and that's what I want to do, delete everything here. Depending on your machine, if you have Windows installed, it's going to give you more options. It might give you, oh, I want to dual boot, just dual boot Windows 7 and Ubuntu or Windows Vista or Windows XP. If you don't want to erase your Windows, this is where you're going to do it. You choose, oh, install Ubuntu alongside Windows, and it's going to make sure that it's going to keep that Windows installed. And if you just want to erase everything and install, then you'll click erase everything. There's an option for erasing everything and installing a fresh copy of Ubuntu also. If you do a dual boot with Windows, like I said, be careful, because I actually noticed that Windows was affected by that install, probably because it repartitioned the disk. Then you press continue. It's going to ask you where you want to install it. I'll install it on this 250 gigabyte drive that is in the computer. If you have Windows and Ubuntu together, what it's going to do is going to show you this same window, but it's going to have two spaces. One is going to be Windows and one is going to be Ubuntu. It's going to tell you, I'm going to take this much space and leave this much space on Windows. And you can actually slide left or right, give more space to Windows or less, give more space to Ubuntu or less. So check that out. And you'll click install now. And there you have that little installing that's going to start at the bottom. Ubuntu is a great operating system to try. So here you have the city where you'll try. It's not that big of a problem if it's not precise into what city you live in, as long as you're in the same time zone, sorry. And here I'm in Montreal. Now click continue. You select the keyboard layout that you would like to have. On this computer, I would like to have actually a keyboard layout that's going to be in French Canada because of the accents, and since I speak French. And I'll choose French Canada. There's Legacy and there's French Canada. I think it's French Canada. I'll check. You can also click the detect keyboard layout at the bottom, and it's going to give you the options to actually, you just press the keys that it's asking you. And here it's actually not selecting right, so I'll choose myself. If you're in the United States, of course, you'll simply choose the layout, the regular layout that is English. So here I'm gonna go back to French. And what's nice is, as you are installing, it is actually continuing to install the machine. And here I continue. It's going to put the right French keyboard layout for me. Of course, you enter your name and you'll enter a username. So here, Tech Guy Montreal. You'll choose a password. If you're the only one using the computer, you don't have to put a big password here. Here it says weak, and I don't really care because this is just a password for the system, and it's easy to understand. If you have many people using the computers around you and you don't want anyone, well, you can also make a bigger password. Require my password at login. So that means when you boot up your computer, it's going to ask you the password. I want to log in automatically. I don't want to enter that password, so I'll click login automatically, so it doesn't ask me the password when I start the computer. Here it's detecting my webcam. Do I want to take a picture? Why not? Take a photo. And here goes. This is my personal photo for account, but you can also choose the pictures on the right side of your screen. Then you click continue. Ubuntu Linux, I've been actually trying out different versions of Ubuntu since about version 8 or 9, and they've really made big steps in making it easier to understand and easier to use. I would say that Linux is actually getting close to easy to understand and work for pretty much everyone. It's very well made. Linux is a open operating system. What that means is that it's not, nobody gets paid really to work on this. The license agreement on Linux is basically a nice, interesting license. It actually says that if you are a developer, if you are a programmer, and you're actually improving Linux, the only thing that makes you work with Linux, actually the contract of Linux, what it does, it tells you that if you're a programmer and you made an improvement to Linux, you have to share it with the community, which I think is a great thing, because I mean, you know, someone out there knows how to program, is going to put that printer driver that you need for your own printer, and so he's making one for his own printer and he's sharing it with the community so that everybody has that printer driver. It's pretty cool. I think it's a nice operating system for that. It's totally free. When you download from the Ubuntu websites, you'll see that there's actually two things they ask for. There's one that is the they're going to ask for a donation, and you know, you can download it without giving anything at all if you want, and if you enjoy it and use it every day, why not make a little donation to the Ubuntu organization. These people work hard to giving us this free operating system. I mean, putting everything online and the downloads, you know, that costs money, and you need to operate the website. Ubuntu 12 works on pretty much every computers from probably a Pentium 4 and up, but I've noticed that the older computers seem to have more problems with the Ubuntu install. So the older your computer, the more, you know, less chance you have to install Ubuntu correctly. But you can correct that by actually getting an older version of Ubuntu. Instead of getting Ubuntu 12, for example, if you have a Pentium 4 and it doesn't work well, why not go and get maybe Ubuntu 10 or 9 and install that instead. It's still going to work, and chances are, if Ubuntu 12 doesn't work, the 10, 9, 8 version or older versions will probably work with your computer. Ubuntu is very light compared to Windows and Mac OS X, so even an old machine will work quite well with Ubuntu, even sometimes better than having Windows. What are the advantages of getting Ubuntu? First of all, fresh new operating system, something different. So it's, you know, like painting your home and changing the everything, in your different rooms, moving things around. Feels interesting. It's like a brand new computer. It is a operating system that is much less dangerous to use on the web because Linux viruses are very few. It's a little bit like using Mac OS X. What makes Mac OS X actually interesting is the fact that because Macs are less than 10% of the world market, someone that's writing a virus will probably want to write a virus for the PC because it has 90% of the market. So it infects more people. It's not that much because Windows is a bad operating system. It's just because it's just so popular and dominant. So, going online with a Linux computer is probably much better. And actually most people that use Linux that I've seen don't really use any antivirus software actually. So this is another advantage. Free, of course, that's a good advantage. Why not, instead of buying Windows for 100 and something, like Windows 8 is 139, Windows 7, why not put a free operating system? You will have a free operating system that works well, that gets updated all the time, and basically will do pretty much everything you need to do on the web. Are there any drawbacks to using a Linux Ubuntu? Yeah. The interface is sometimes a little awkward and difficult to understand. One of the most difficult things in Ubuntu is when you try to install new software or drivers. Ubuntu is getting better because now there's more and more of these automatic packages that install on the machines. But the biggest problem of Ubuntu is the fact that a lot of the stuff you need to install requires you to go to the terminal and enter these weird commands. It's a little bit like going into a DOS box. And that's probably the most problematic thing about Linux. It still has too many of these awkward and difficult to understand ways of working that most people actually will not will have difficulty using. But it's getting better, and more it's actually asking for things automatically or installing pretty much automatically different pieces of software. The other drawback of using Linux or Ubuntu Linux is the drivers. All operating systems require drivers that make the hardware work. And the biggest problem about Ubuntu is that the list of hardware, even though quite extensive and quite good, is not as big as Mac or Windows. So it means that your favorite printer or your favorite camera or your favorite USB device might not work. And that is something to think about when you install Ubuntu. It's getting good though. I've seen less and less hardware that doesn't work on Linux. But there is hardware that doesn't work on Linux, and you have to know that. By the way, that's one of the reasons why you want to have the internet access always on while it's installing, because it detects everything that's plugged in your computer. So if it doesn't have a driver or needs a special piece of software, that internet connection is used while the installation is going on to make your computer work with those pieces of hardware. If you don't have any internet connection, it might not detect it at first. Another drawback that might be a problem is the fact that some of the internet websites might not work properly. Even though the operating system comes with Firefox, which is a known and tried operating system, it is also not complete. A lot of websites require you to have these add-ons, like Flash Player or Silverlight, and some websites require special add-ons. That the more you are into a specialized website that needs special add-on features, the more difficult it might be to use Ubuntu correctly. So that's another thing that you might want to know. Ubuntu is great if you want to just learn how to use computers and learn new skills. It's an operating system that's running on maybe 2 or 3% of computers worldwide. That's not a lot. Percentage-wise, it is a lot when you think about the fact that there's 2% of billions of computers is a lot of computers. Another thing that might happen in the install is that a lot of the computer installs can go wrong with Linux, and depending on the machine you're using, there might be some install problems that are difficult to solve or really unsolvable. So be aware that if it doesn't install on your machine, it's a possibility. The average installation length of Ubuntu is about an hour most of the time. So if you're wondering how long it might take to have Ubuntu on your machine when you start installing, I would say that probably an hour is the average install time. But like I said, it depends on the speed of your computer. Very fast computers using USB thumb drive installation might actually install in less than half an hour. And other installs might take as long as an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on the speed of the machine. As you see here, there are very few questions that you have to answer, and the process is pretty much automated. So there's nothing much to do except just wait and look at the computer install itself pretty much on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is quite small, so even just using a very small partition, if you're a little stressed out on disk space but you still want to have Linux, well, keep in mind that just 10 gigs is probably enough to install Linux and have it running well on a computer. They do say that 4.5 gigs the minimum for Ubuntu Linux. I would recommend a little more, because 4.5 means you're really stretched out on space, and the less space you have in a computer, the less the performance is really affected, and Ubuntu will probably not work very well. Minimum requirements, Ubuntu 12. I would probably suggest that the minimum requirements is a Core 2 machine. But yes, I've tried it on machines that are Pentium 4s, and it works quite well, actually, even on a Pentium 4 machine. So depending on the machine you're using, you might actually say that it works pretty well, probably on machines that have at least a 1 GHz 32-bit processor and up. The version I am installing here is a 64 bits because this is a Core 2 machine. The amount of RAM, Ubuntu does not require a lot of RAM. it can work with as low as 512 megs, which is very low. But if you want it to be fast and have a good performance level, I would recommend more than 1 gig of RAM, so that it can at least load every module in memory, so it gets faster and faster while you're working. The machine I'm installing on here is a Core 2 2 GHz. It has 250 gig hard drive, as you've seen a little earlier. It has 3 gigs of RAM memory, which makes it a very good candidate for the Ubuntu operating system. If you have any problems while the install is going on, for example error messages, it is sometimes good to install, maybe reinstall the system, try it 2 or 3 times. It might make an error the first time but work well the second time. I've also noticed that there are some inconsistencies in the install process. Yesterday I installed it 3 times, and while I installed it 3 times, it had 3 different installs. There were things that were changed. For example, the first time I installed, I had the Ethernet card, but not the Wi-Fi. The second time I installed, no internet, no Ethernet, and no Wi-Fi. So there's no way I could have connected to the web. And the third time I installed, Ethernet was back, but Firefox for some reason didn't want to load. So it's kind of really weird. It seems not to be totally consistent when you install it. But yesterday I've tried it with 13.10, and that's why you saw that I replaced 13.10. And I know that 12.04 is much better. And that's why I think everybody should take the 12.04. Having the latest version is not always the best idea in operating systems. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you're installing Ubuntu, at least you can follow along. Make sure that you don't miss anything and answer the questions correctly, and have your own Ubuntu software installed on your computer. If you're wondering if there are any books or help, yes, lots and lots of books available, ebooks and regular paperback books available about Linux, Ubuntu Linux. I have actually downloaded from the Kobo website Ubuntu Linux 12, Get Started with Ubuntu 12, which is an interesting book that you can download. Amazon has a lot of books about Ubuntu also that you can download. So if you're looking for references and books to help you learn, there's a lot of books online. And if you don't want to buy any book, the Ubuntu website has pretty much full documentation on how the operating system works. So you can just go to the Ubuntu website, click the documentation, and there you'll have, I would say, pretty much anything you need to know about Ubuntu. As you see here, it's a lengthy process that's going on and on. One little correction that I've noticed now, I think I've said at the beginning of the video, get to the version 12.10. I think it's 12.04, the latest version, and that's what I have here, 12.04.3. And what's nice is that the operating system actually updates itself. So every it's not like Windows or Mac. You won't have an update once a month. I've noticed that every time I've used Ubuntu, you actually get updates almost every day. So every time there's an update, it's going to push it and it's going to say, well, there's an update for your operating system. So click here. It's always an interesting moment here when you look at an operating system like now, and there's no more noise. I don't hear the DVD drive working, and I don't even see the hard drive light. It's not blinking, and there's always like this moment of thinking, well, is it frozen or not? Everything is possible with Linux and Ubuntu, so just wait. When you see that the operating system seems not to be doing anything except that little pinwheel, like turning around on the upper side there, you see that little pinwheel, and you see that it's not frozen or anything, but the computer seems not to be doing anything. Be patient. It's the key to success very often in computers. Probably one of the bigger problems on this operating system is waiting. I've noticed here when I'm watching that the network card on my laptop seems to be working a lot. So I would probably think that there's some kind of download here of updates and operating system updates maybe. And that's why it doesn't seem to do anything, but it actually is downloading from the web probably. And here it restarts. You can hear the drive that just restarted. So you see that it's not stuck. One of the biggest problems for a lot of people when they're trying to fix problems or install some software is the fact that they're not patient enough. So they just don't wait. If you are wondering what kind of software you can download on Ubuntu, well, there's the interesting now is the way to do it. There's the Ubuntu App Store. So they've gotten in the way of app stores like Windows and Mac. And in Linux, actually having a app store is a very, very good idea, because the biggest problem with Linux is the fact that installing software is often a complicated and difficult task. And by going through the App Store, well, the packages and the programs install themselves almost automatically when you click on them. So you can go through the App Store and check for the different softwares that you have. It comes basic with a browser, which is Firefox, a few games. I think it has a few games pre-installed. And it has, and this is nice, a full Office suite pre-installed. So you can actually have word processing or Excel-like features if you use Excel and PowerPoint. So it's nice to have an operating system that comes pretty much with what everybody needs right from the start, instead of having to buy the software to add stuff. there are many other Linux distributions available if you like Linux and want to try other things. Some people don't like Ubuntu. I have a friend of mine that's a tech for a company, and he actually doesn't like Ubuntu. So he's like doesn't like the interface and the way it's done. A lot of tech guys don't like Ubuntu because Ubuntu is probably the version that is closest to what everybody wants because it's easy to use. But it's also maybe a little more, a little too candy-like for most tech guys. So tech guys will tend to use different distributions. A lot of people don't want to have that graphic interface also. Ubuntu uses its own GUI, which is a graphic user interface, which is quite nice. But a lot of Linux guys actually just want to have terminal command lines and the basic UI just to do what they want. Linux is very powerful, and it's actually used a lot in the tech community because a lot of servers, a lot of company servers are actually Linux based. And the reason being is that since Linux is a free distribution, instead of having all these servers with Windows that you have to purchase a license, Linux being free costs less per machine. It's also very powerful, and there are less chances of having viruses in the software and the with Linux than in Windows. So some companies will go through with Linux on the server side. So the thing is, you'll need also specialized tech guys that really use Ubuntu. Here we have continued installation. You always have that little progression at the bottom with kind of telling you where it's at and what it's doing and installing. If you have problems with Ubuntu or you're trying to install some stuff, one thing that is nice is the Ubuntu website has a very, very big Linux community to help you with problems. And here we go. We now have a Restart Now button that we'll click. And it says that you need to, the installation is complete. You need to restart the computer to order to use the new installation. So that's what we're doing now. Usually at this step, as it's rebooting, it's going to eject your disk or ask you to eject your USB thumb drive if you're using that. So remove the disk or thumb drive when it's being asked to. If you're using a disk, usually the door for the disk will open itself automatically. And now is the big test. And here my disk just ejected. It asked me to press enter, which shuts down Ubuntu and restarts. So here I've got my disk now. So let's see what it does. Usually here you're going to get into that famous Linux interface. If everything went well with no error messages, you are now going to have Linux, Ubuntu Linux installed on your computer. first time of loading Linux, Ubuntu Linux, was probably longer than the regular time. And here we are, having a installed Linux, Ubuntu Linux computer. Here's your desktop. Next thing you'll want to check is probably check if connections are available. Here it says no network devices available, so this I'll have to fix in some way. And you can check for your system settings. If you don't have internet or there's something missing, you can click additional drivers here, which is going to pop out any drivers that might be available for your machine that are missing. Some drivers cannot be installed automatically for the simple reason that they don't have license to use. Checking for available drivers. Hopefully it's gonna tell me that I have a driver for my network cards. Here, sorry, Ubuntu has experienced internal error. So this is Ubuntu, you know, sometimes have problems with that. And of course, restarting and trying to fix those errors is part of the fun of Ubuntu. As you see here, it's not a perfect operating system and might not totally work well. Sometimes you need the help of another computer to use your hardware. So for example, in my case here, I don't have any network now, so there's no internet. So what I'll probably want to do is actually use my Windows machine and check for my hardware on my machine to try and find drivers for my network card and install them. So it can be as automatic that you have everything working and your Wi-Fi is there, or like in my case, I'll have to do a little more digging, a little more working to find a way to make it work. But that's basically how you install Linux. Hope that your install is going well and that your install might have the internet that I don't have. And hey, hope that you're enjoying your new operating system. So this, if you enjoy our videos, please subscribe to our channel. You'll be informed when new videos are online. If you have any comments, questions on what you've seen, let us know. Maybe you have a feature or something that you'd like us to make a video of, ask away. We'll try to answer any questions if possible. So thanks for watching and hope you come back to the Easy Computer Fixes channel. Bye-bye.